Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology podcast. Thomas Miller over here in the left side box and Robert Glasscock in the right side box. And we're here to talk about another listener
I have a
question.
question regarding electional astrology. I'm launching a new business and I was wondering how astrology can be used to choose the most auspicious date to launch that business. And would you work it around your own chart as well? If you can give me some information regarding this topic, that'd be great. Thank you. Bye.
Hey, bye. I love that. So, one of the top things I think that people want to know when they talk to you in readings and consult an astrologer is timing on when is the best time to fill in the blank, get married, get divorced, start a business, go on a trip, etc. So, we're not just talking about starting a business here, although that's her platform. Let's show people what tools are available in the toolbox to uh, look at a chart and find the best times for things.
It's a great question and something that a lot of us in life want to know. Should I start a business? One of the things you can start with is the natal chart to see what kind of a business chart you have. Some people are better at certain aspects of a business than other aspects of it. I couldn't do bookkeeping if my life depended on it, for example. Uh, so, starting a business, which is her question, we'll come back to the other aspects of what Thomas was bringing up, because how to use astrology. Starting a business, what is it? It's speculative in nature. I don't care what kind of a business it is. To start with, it's speculative, and all speculation is ruled by the fifth house. So you want to go to your own chart, your natal chart, and look to see what does your natal fifth house of speculation look like. This is the house of what is called the avocation, the calling that you have. I'm called to be an astrologer, or I'm called to be a writer, or I'm called to be a mechanic, whatever the calling is. And this ties in very much to the famous Joseph Campbell phrase, follow your bliss. The reason that's so important is because people who can identify what they love to do and then figure out a way to make a living at it, to make a business out of it, are pretty much home free. It doesn't guarantee you'll be a millionaire, but it guarantees that you will always make a success of it. You'll have food and shelter. You can make a living at it, and you won't age the way people do who have to take a job they don't like and work at that all their lives. And every day they go to work and it's drudgery and they wish they were doing something else. If you can find something you love to do, follow your bliss. You're way ahead of the game. So you want to look at the fifth house to see what planets are in that house, and especially what planet rules the sign on your fifth house. Because you want that planet, which rules speculation in your life, you want that planet to be favorably aspected in your natal chart to begin a business. So let's say you have Sagittarius or maybe Pisces on your fifth cusp. Well, the old Chaldean ruler of Pisces was Sagittarius, was Jupiter before we discovered Neptune, before we had telescopes. So Jupiter rules both Sagittarius and Pisces. So if you had either one of those, let's just say, for argument's sake, you had Jupiter or Sagittarius or Pisces on your fifth cusp, now you want to look at transiting Jupiter and see where it is and what aspects it's forming in your natal chart to hone in on a time that would be good to launch that business. So that's one approach to it, is looking at, say, transits and solar arcs to your natal horoscope, because you also want the solar arc planet that rules your fifth house to be forming favorable aspects. So let's say you have Jupiter ruling the fifth house. You'd like to see solar arc and converse solar arc Jupiter forming, say, a conjunction, sextile, or trine to your natal sun or to your natal Jupiter. So that's one approach, using the natal chart. Secondly, though, if you're starting a business, a real business, you're going to need legal papers. You're going to have to start that business, and those papers will have to be signed on a particular date. You can very often choose that date. You may, if to start a business, want to be forming an LLC, a limited liability corporation. Or it may be even bigger than that. You may really want to form a corporation, dates of incorporation, and so on. And that requires preparing and getting with an attorney or attorneys and so on. There may be more than one attorney involved signing these documents. That is electional astrology at its finest. So then you can disregard your natal chart. You treat your business as if it's its own entity. So, for example, in horary astrology, if a client comes to you as an astrologer with a question about their own business, not about somebody they work for, but their own business, their business is ruled by the first house in the horary chart. It's its own entity. So the same thing is true for the chart for the business, the time of incorporation or something. So you can begin to look then at favorable times to incorporate or to sign those legal documents. And you can absolutely schedule with your attorney, all right, I'd like to sign these on this date within this particular hour or even this particular half hour. Can we schedule that? And they will, you're paying them. So you can do that and maximize your most favorable time to launch that business. And I'll give you one more thing because I want to kick this over to Thomas and hear what he has to say about this too. There's a wonderful book by Swami Paramahansa Yogananda written back in, I don't know, the 19, who knows, I forget now, it's been so long. I think it was written in the 20s, 30s, somewhere back in there originally. It's called Autobiography of a Yogi. This is the man that started the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is still in existence in Pasadena. Incredible man. And of course, he used astrology, but he knew how astrology works. And one of the statements he makes in this book is, you can give me the worst date in my natal chart to start a business enterprise, and I will start an enterprise on that date that will succeed. And he's right. If you understand astrology, hard aspects are nothing to be afraid of. They do indicate challenges and conflicts, but challenges and conflicts force actions, because you have to take some action to resolve the conflict or the challenge. And in taking actions, you're creating the business, and solving the problems moves that business up to the next level and the next. There are always challenges. So you don't have to be afraid of squares and oppositions and so on. Some people are, but you don't need to be. He wasn't. So, Thomas, now what do you think about all this? And I want to hear some points that you have made, because you've started your own business more than once.
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do here. And it sounds like you're having a heck of a thunderstorm there, too. I hope you're all
We
right.
are. We are. I'm fine.
Wow.
I just hope I don't lose power. But if you're hearing thunder and
Woo.
lightning, that's what's going on.
Well, we'll figure it
Very
out.
exciting.
We'll get it there. We'll edit it together. So we'll get you a show. All right. But let's just do this real quick. And I'd like to do mine and yours together real fast here. Let's just talk about those fifth house characteristics, because at least people can tell how things played out for you and me.
Very good. If we start with your chart, you can look at your fifth house right off the bat. What do you have? Libra, a Venus ruled sign on your fifth house of speculation. Forget for the moment what's in the fifth house, but you are one person who is likely to find your bliss and follow your bliss. You have a Venus ruled sign. There are only two, Taurus and Libra, on your fifth house of speculation. Libra is a sign of collaboration. What do you think we are doing? We're collaborating. What have you done with Fred Dobson? You've collaborated, on and on and on. Fun astrology, it's a collaboration. I like to joke and say you're the Merv Griffin of metaphysics, but I think you are. You bring a lot of us together under one umbrella, yours. So you have, and then when you look at your fifth house, There is your sun, your life force in Scorpio, a business sign. Scorpio is other people's money, but it sounds very facile. But nonetheless, Scorpio is a terrific business sign. You also invest in the stock market knowledgeably with astrology. It's another speculation. The stock market is nothing but speculation. So the sun, Neptune of spirituality, astrology, and metaphysics, and Mars of action, all in Scorpio in the fifth house of speculation. A great chart for everything you're doing. Broadcasting, collaboration, metaphysics, spirituality, audiobooks, you name it. All right, now you look at my chart. What do I have in the fifth house of speculation? Bingo, Taurus, another Venus ruled sign on the house of speculation. I'm another guy like you who is very likely in life to find and follow his bliss. Where does my Venus, because that's the ruler planet of Taurus, where is it? In my 10th house of career. In, guess what? Scorpio. Just like you with the Scorpio. And next to Venus, I have the midheaven and Mars in Libra, the sign of collaboration. You and I have kind of identical charts for this, if you want to know the truth. Funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's interesting. And what always amazes me is how we can so naturally fall into these paths by just following our chart. Okay, so what that did was set up the aptitude or eptitude for a certain profession or line of work or even business. And you were talking about you could even go back to that and put a transit chart up around there, and we could take a look at Jupiter, find Jupiter. Is Jupiter in a favorable position to start this business? But the other thing I'd like to point out here is let's put up a consultation chart, because this is almost a magical chart. This is the one chart that a lady by the name of Evangeline Adams, who was a brilliant astrologer back in the 19 teens and 20s. You ladies would have liked Evangeline Adams. You ought to study up on her. She was an amazing woman. But she only used this chart. It's called a consultation chart. And basically what you do is you put the transits up for the time that you're looking at. So I just threw this very time that we're recording here, and that's the inner wheel. And then you put your natal chart on the outside of it. So let's say that Robert Glasscock was considering starting a little mailbox money business out of his home, and he wondered if today would be a good day to do it. So Robert, why don't you pick up from there, and let's dissect this, and maybe we'll help our caller use a consultation chart, which you can do for yourself, certainly, to see if or dial in the best time for her new business.
All right, we'll get to that, but the consultation chart, this is so important what Thomas is bringing up here. You can set the chart for the time of consultation when you're reading for a client, and you use those house cusps, but you plug in the client's natal planets into those house cusps, not the transiting planet. So what I do in my software is set up a double wheel like Thomas has here, and I use the transiting planets. That's the inner wheel. That sets the house cusp. And then I create a white oval mask, and I block out that center pole like Thomas is drawing it now. And now I plug in my natal planets. And what it shows you, this consultation chart, is a snapshot of your or the client's life, their natal horoscope, at the moment of consultation. And where the sun falls and the moon falls in the consultation chart will tell you what their question is. So in this case, ignore the middle wheel. Just look at the outer wheel, my birth planet. My birth sun is conjunct Neptune in Libra in the third house. So this is an idea. It's a mental idea. It may involve collaboration or partnership. It might involve writing. It might involve publishing, because this third ninth axis. Oh, look at where my natal moon is. The public in the ninth house of publications. It's in Aries, a sign of new starts. So if I knew nothing about this client, I would say, are you thinking about, or have you just started writing a book? Bingo. You have. Are you collaborating with somebody on this? Because the sun is in Libra along with Neptune. Bingo. I'm collaborating with Thomas Miller. Is this book about metaphysics or spirituality or astrology? Because the sun is conjunct Neptune. Bingo, it is. Is it going to be successful? Where would you look? It's speculation. That's the fifth house. That's Scorpio, and you always use the Chaldean rulers in horary astrology. Sometimes you can revert to the collective or contemporary rulers, but you start with the Chaldean. So Mars rules Scorpio, the speculation, and that's what this question is. Is this book going to be successful? Mars is in Libra, and Libra, it's in the same. Now, in this kind of astrology, it's like horary. Each planet is allowed to move the full span of the sign that it is in to make an aspect. No planet is allowed to leave the sign it's in to make an aspect. So here, the ruler of speculation, Mars, which rules Scorpio, the fifth cusp of speculation, Mars is in the sign of Libra. Again, collaboration, and it's a conjunction. Now, you can go even further. You can get a timing from this. How long is it from the sun has to do the moving to conjunct Libra? It's about 14 degrees. So you can say 14 weeks from today. Well, 14 weeks is about 3 months. Guess what? That's when this book will be completed, in about 3 months. Thomas and I've talked about this. He knows this. I said that it's funny that this little simple sample consultation chart that we're using for illustration purposes is showing this that accurately. So this is how you begin to use this. Thomas, you want to weigh in on some of this?
You know, one of the things that I've grappled with on this, and I have become so comfortable as a student of your style, that the tools that we just talked about, a transit chart to your natal chart, analyzing your natal chart, you can look at the consultation chart, and you can even do one we didn't talk about, but horary, where you just ask horary questions about the different parts of the incorporation process or the starting process. But she's also asking a question using some language that has kind of come into revival now, which is the horror or the Hellenistic techniques of electional astrology. So that talks about finding when certain planets are dignified. You don't want the malefics, Mars and Saturn, for example. You want to keep them out of angular houses, avoiding periods where dignified planets are afflicted. There's a lot of rules around electional astrology of you just keep moving the chart around and you start with a premise of, well, maybe this could be a good time. Another one I wanted to ask you about is voids of course moon or void of course moons. But to determine the best time where all the planets could be aligned, possibly the very best they are. And that's fine. I've studied that, and I know you have too back in the day. And then you throw up a consultation chart, and you even can ask the consultation chart like it's a horary chart. And remember, we have the horary course that explains all of this. So if you're interested in deep diving into this, you can get the horary course. It's on the funastrology.com website. And we talk about the consultation chart in the course in depth. So there are a lot of techniques that are just built around horary and the consultation chart that will take care of all of those other things. And once you learn the horary kind of language and the consultation chart interpretive language, you don't need all that other stuff, is what I've found. That's my 2 cents.
True. Something else about this consultation chart that's so great in conjunction with horary astrology. Mark Edmund Jones talks about the consultation chart in his book too. When you're using the consultation chart, you're using the natal horoscope. It's actually the consultation chart, a combination of horary and natal. There are very strict rules in horary astrology that tell you you can't read this chart. For example, in horary, true horary, you have to have more than 3 degrees rising or less than 27 degrees. Saturn cannot be in the 7th house in horary. You don't read the chart. There are 5 rules like that. In the consultation, and including the void of course moon, in horary astrology, if the moon is void of making an aspect a Ptolemaic aspect yet before it leaves the sign that it's in, then it's considered void of course. It makes no aspects before leaving the sign it's in. That rule also goes out the window with the consultation chart. Every consultation chart is readable. And that's a huge difference. So when you're practicing as an astrologer all day and you get several horary questions during the day, you're only going to have maybe 3 or 4 ascendants during the whole course of the day. So every horary chart is going to be quite like the previous one. With a consultation chart, they're all different because they're not using the transits, they're using the natal chart. So that's
a
another
great
important.
point. Yeah.
And this is all covered in the course that we sell too.
Let's just show an example here of what you're talking about. So we go back to the consultation chart that we picked for today, and we're going to ask for Robert Glasscock, this inquiring young mind. He wants to know if he starts this speculative venture today, will it be successful? So we would look to the 5th house because that's of speculation. Like Robert said, you go find the Chaldean ruler of that house that rules the question, that's Mars. The immediate outcome, the opposite side of the chart, this is so easy to do. This is exactly how you do it, is ruled by Taurus, that's Venus. There's Venus in the chart. And then you simply determine, are they in a Ptolemaic aspect? Well, remember Robert said a few minutes ago, you can move the whole distance of the sign, but not outside the sign. So these two are not in a Ptolemaic aspect. So Robert, at first blush, as we're just looking at that, it appears that you might not find today to be the best day for your new business.
True, because they don't make a Ptolemaic aspect, except this is where it pays to study astrology.
The course.
Mars, get that course. Mars and Venus are in mutual reception, which is an enormously important aspect from birth. This is my natal planets, remember. Mutual aspect means 2 planets in each other's signs. Venus is in Scorpio, Mars's sign. Mars is in Libra, Venus's sign. So Mars can be read not only at 22 Libra, it can also be read at the same degree in its own sign. So it can be read at 22 degrees Scorpio. Venus is at 4 degrees Scorpio, so it can not only be read there, it can be read back in its own sign of Libra, retaining the 4 degrees. So Venus can be read at 4 Libra. When you do that, when you place Mars at 22 degrees Scorpio because of the mutual reception, 22 from 4 is 18 degrees. So now you've got a period of 18 weeks, let's say, for this book to be finished. When you read Venus back in its home sign Libra at 4 degrees Libra, lo and behold, it's a conjunction with Neptune at 4 degrees Libra. And what this book is an astrology book. Neptune, 3rd house, writing, publishing, opposite the 9th, and so on. And also that Venus, when you read it back at 4 degrees Libra, it's opposite the moon of the public and also in the 9th house of publishing. So be aware in charts, when you see a mutual reception, it's very important. It's a wonderful aspect to have. It has saved my bacon in my life. Because anything you get into in the nature of a scrape or a challenge, you can get out of. And it's been true all my life. I've come very close to making some drastic errors until I realized, wait a minute, I've got this out here. So
Now,
this is a very important point, and that's a good reason to suggest this course to people who are interested in this kind of astrology.
there's one thing that I think we just set a protocol here. Because if somebody's wanting to start a business, obviously they're up against a lot of things that they have to do, and they're also up against time frames. You can't just let this drag out forever. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to keep coming back and just hammering that consultation chart every 6 hours to get a different answer. That's not how you do this. And I think would you just elaborate on that a little bit of when is a reasonable amount of time to come back to the consultation chart for the same question?
Well, this is true throughout astrology. People, especially when you don't get the answer you want, then of course you say, well, I'll ask another time. And that's true. You can ask another time. But there's a very fine line, and you have to be your own best judge of this, between playing games with astrology and using it wisely. So just, and Mark Edmund Jones makes this point in his book as well. So if this last chart we had looked at gave a negative answer, no, this is not going to go. All right, does that mean for the rest of my life I will never write a book that's going to succeed? No, it only pertained to this one question. So when could I ask again? And Mark Edmund Jones is very smart. Wait for an event that's related to the question to happen, and then set up a chart for that event. And it can be a small event, something like a week from today. Let's say when I just looked at this chart, if I'd gotten a negative answer, a week from now, Thomas and I are on the phone, we're having a conversation, and he brings up some idea about this book that I might want to think about. Aha, that's something I hadn't thought about. It'd be great to include in this book. Suddenly it brings the question back to life, not from my head, from somebody else's. And I've got an event. The moment that Thomas brings it up and I understand it and think about it and realize what has just happened, it's a small event in relationship to this question. Now I have a legitimate reason to set up a new chart, not coming back to this one again. It's a new chart, and read it, because that little event that Thomas just plugged into my brain, have you thought about this? Wouldn't this make a nice chapter? That chapter could take this book in a whole different direction that completely changes the outlook and the outcome of the book. So it deserves a new chart, and that's what you do. You don't come back and beat this one to death. In this case, this was a favorable chart, especially with the 18-week time frame, which is very helpful. So does that make sense, Thomas, about how to figure out when to ask again?
Yes. Yeah. I think that I'll tell you my personal take on this, and I'm not right. This is just my personal thought. It's not based on anything other than, I guess, some early Bible teaching back in the day, but then experience, just living this out over, especially these last 15 or so conscious years, that when you're given a course, when you're given a direction, it's just pretty good, wise advice to stay on that path or that direction until something changes that direction. When I was told to do audiobooks in 2013, nothing has derailed that. And in fact, just yesterday, I got another deal on an audiobook from a referral. So it's like, stay in the path, stay in the course of where you've been on until something changes. And I think you can apply that on a fractal basis here on a much more narrow time frame. In other words, when the chart shows you, here's the direction you need to be thinking about for this new business, until there's, like Robert just mentioned, perfect complement to that, until there's a substantive change, I think you stay on that course. That's one thought. There's another one that I'd like to just drop in here. And that is, years ago, I learned about a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Blink. It's the blink. It's that moment that when you think about starting a new business, I should write a book, or something comes into your consciousness, it's that first response that is your highest self responding to that situation. So I learned a long time ago, I thought that is invaluable. And I could tell you some scary stories over the past year of things that have unfolded in my life. As you guys have known, the move, the whole thing, there are some scary things that have happened around that from just tuning into intuition. And I described my process on that in 2 videos that were released in February of 2025 on the Subconscious Mind Mastery YouTube channel. I shot them from a friend's home in New Mexico, and I detailed the process that I use. So the other component that I add to this is this whole intuitive process as well. Asking, dialoguing with higher self, just like you can do with a chart, because what I've found, Robert, I don't know, maybe it's my sun and Neptune glued together on the same degree in Scorpio, but I can look at an astrology chart and just almost not think about the structure of the chart like you do with your Libran mind. My watery Scorpio, airy Pisces midheaven will look at that chart and feel what's going on in that chart. And I almost don't even look at the rules. I can feel it. And every time that that's happened, it's been accurate. And mention that to others in their charts and readings and whatnot, and it's accurate there too. So I think adding the intuitive dialoguing with your higher self, check those videos out. I think that will help as well.
Let me just throw in, you and I both have Sun conjunct Neptune.
Yes.
And that's that fact. I love the rules. I want to know every one of them. But like everything else, and anybody will tell you this, rules are made to be broken under the right circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to know what the rules are. They're there for a reason. Very often, your flash of intuition, if you set up an horary chart, you're going to have less than 3 degrees rising. All astrology is saying, it's too soon for astrology to give you an answer. It doesn't mean don't do it. It doesn't mean do it. It's just too soon for astrology to be of any help. And so the minute you see less than 3 degrees rising, ignore it. Don't bother reading anything else in the chart. Throw it away. Wait for an event.
And that's actually some of the best information you might be getting at that point.
Absolutely it is. It really
that's
is.
what you want to know. It's too soon, right? We're
I love
a little bit early.
That's why I can't recommend that course highly enough. I still use horary all the time. I use consultation charts all the time. The advice, if you will, the insights and the timing that you can get from that are like nothing. There's nothing else in life that can give this to you. Nothing. Not even a shrink can give you timing, but astrology can.
I'll tell you, it's the most amazing, truly amazing package there is, given to us by, the gods above, those that are looking out for our well-being, that we've been given this incredible gift. And we can put it together. And then there is this song that sings in our heart. They say prayer is us talking to God and intuition is God talking back to us. I mean, if you tune into that, if you realize you could put another word in there, higher self or highest source or highest power, our creator, that divinity that has brought all of this together and connects us in various ways, that when you tie that in and marry it with astrology, you've got all you need. You really do. So I hope that helps. Robert, thank you so much for this. We'll just leave it here. And if you'd like to, one of the things is, if you were, I don't know the scope of this business, if it's a little Amazon business or an Etsy business, or if this is we're really doing some serious work here and there's going to be an incorporation and we're hiring staff and we're getting venture capital, et cetera, I would not start either of those until I sat down with Robert and had a conversation with him about it, because you could flush all of this out in the time of a consultation and just focus on this. You can get a hold of him and say, look, I'm starting this thing, or I want to get married. Oh my God, would anybody get married without talking to this guy? You're cray-cray if you do. I'm sorry, but that is a life important decision. What about your child is getting ready to go to college? Wouldn't you want to know what the chart has to say about that? So check out the link in the notes. It's the description in the notes. And it has his new website, which was recreated here just recently. And what was it, late 24 or 25? When did you get that live?
Last year.
End of 24. There's a new link in all these latest episodes. So check that out and get a hold of him, because it would so be worth it to get that information nailed down accurately from an astrologer that's been doing this since the mid-60s. We'll leave it right there. Said enough. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock.